We are the Netteburg Family, and we hiked the Appalachian Trail as a family of 6. We're not actually the biggest family to do it. There was a bigger family, actually there's at least one bigger family that we know of, maybe more.
Since then, more too, so it's great. More and more kids are getting out, we love it.
Yeah. But we had been in Chad, Africa for a decade, working as missionary physicians, and we were a little bit burned out. So we needed a break, so what better way to take a break than to go for a walk? So we decided to come back to the States and to go for a walk. But like she said, her name is Danae, and who has hiked the Appalachian Trail? All right, a few. Who have hiked far enough to get a trail name? All right, quite a few. Great. So I think probably most people know what trail names are. You have your identity stripped away from you on the trail one way or another, and then you get a new identity. And it's usually, there are usually stories behind it. But being as how we were hiking kind of on our own, we didn't have the traditional way of being named by other people, so we kind of named each other. So Danae was known as Queen Bee, because she is the queen of the nest.
Keep everybody in order.
My name on the Appalachian Trail was Lion King, but it later became Spreadsheet because there's a lot of logistics involved. This is the Beast, and she was 4 on the Appalachian Trail. This is Angel Wings, and she was 6 on the Appalachian Trail. She turned 7. And Zane was Boomerang, and he was 8 and turned 9 on the Appalachian Trail. And Lyle was Blaze, and was 11 on the Appalachian Trail. We had a good time.
We had a great time.
No, we had a great time. And then the very pint-sized elephant in the room, her name is Piper. And Piper, what's your trail name? Dead weight. And she was with us for the last couple weeks of the Appalachian Trail.
You're giving away the end.
We just weren't aware that she had joined us for the last couple. So everybody receives trail magic, and she turned out to be our trail magic. There's always... Anyway, showers are hard to come by on the Appalachian Trail, so that one time you get a shower can be dangerous. You never know what will happen.
So we decided, what can we tell you about the Appalachian Trail? Most people here already know more than we do probably about the Appalachian Trail. We were just learning as we were going. We had never done a through hike. And so we thought we'd just split it up into 4 small segments, just an hour each, so don't worry about that. But the first one, Olin was going to tell a story about trail names, and then I was going to share with you our wisdom on how to get children to go down the trail. Close your ears, kids. And then we were going to talk about gear, because everybody loves gear, is kind of obsessing about it. And then the last part was kids are stronger than you think.
And we know what we're going to talk about, and it's not very interesting. So your questions will be more interesting. So we're going to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. And if you have questions as we're going, just ask. You don't have to wait until the end. I love this setup. I mean, just a table and chairs sitting around having a conversation. So specifically about the trail names, we decided that we would share how one of the children got named. And we chose the Beast. So the Beast was 4 years old. And actually, while she was hiking, we had just started. And when we started the trail, we said, okay, guys, we just need a break from our work in Chad. We're going to go back to America. We're going to hike, and we're going to hike for a month. And if it's really terrible, we'll stop before a month is up. But we're going to try to finish a month. And after a month, if we don't like it, we'll stop. And if we like it, we'll keep going. And that was the deal. So we decided to start. And this was the Beast's backpack when she started. This is like a $2 backpack from Decathlon, which is a French kind of discount REI sort of deal. So she was carrying this backpack, and we were in the roller coaster of Virginia, which is kind of where we decided to start our hike. early spring, kind of where you come out of the mountains of the Shenandoah headed north, so you're kind of lower elevation, never really gets too high, but there's a lot of this, as the whole Appalachian Trail is known to do. So we were in the roller coaster, which is I think 14 hills and 11 miles or something like that. And we had gone up and down, and this was in our first week on the trail. And the 4-year-old sits down on a log and just starts to cry. And we thought, oh, okay, well, we tried to go for a month, but we're not going to even make it a week. That was fun. Let's find something else to do. So I finally got out of, and if you've ever tried to get a reason out of a 4-year-old, it's not the easiest thing to do. But after much prodding and milking, I figured out that she was crying because Mommy had taken her backpack and with a carabiner had clipped it to her own. So Danae was carrying this backpack on the back of her backpack. And the beast was upset about that. And so Danae was trying to reason with the 4-year-old, saying, no, it's hard, it's a lot of up and down, it's heavy, just let me carry it. And she was not having it. She was still crying. So I said, fine. So I just took it off and I gave it to her. And she slung it over her back and she took off like a shot up the hill. And it was about 3 of these up and downs in the roller coaster before we could actually catch her. She'd go up, she'd go around the corner, and we'd come up behind her around the corner, and she'd just be kind of sitting there on a log, smirking and looking at us like the little cad that she is. And before we could catch her, she'd go off up around the next corner, and we'd find her sitting on a rock waiting for us again. So we thought, okay, that's a little bit of a beastie move. But we weren't sure. The beast seemed like a bit of a rough name for a cute little 4-year-old girl, so we weren't really sure about that. But then after we got from there up to the Pennsylvania-Maryland state line, we actually flipped back up to my father's house in Hamburg, up at Port Clinton, and we decided to come southbound back to the Maryland line. It was nice, especially when you've got young kids, and especially during COVID, we kind of wanted to make sure that we had some safe ways out. We never wanted to get too far from a home base where we knew we could get somewhere safe to ride out whatever the pandemic was going to turn into, because nobody knew at that point. But we had come down through Duncannon, and if you've ever gone south out of Duncannon, there's about 750 feet that go straight up. And so we had come out of Duncannon, we had some ice cream and pizza in our bellies, and we were feeling good. And it was getting later on in the afternoon, and it was going to get dark. And we start up this 750-foot climb, and some, teenage boy from Duncannon was out in his jogging shoes and jogging shorts and was just kind of training for, basketball, whatever he was training for. And he was running up the mountain. And she was going to have none of that. Nobody was going to beat her. So she took off after this guy who's going up the mountain. And the last thing that we see as she's getting out of sight is this guy looks back and sees a little 4-year-old running up the hill after him. And he tries to put some distance between him and her, and it's harder than it looks.
I had a hard time taking video because I was trying to catch up with her.
Yeah, well, none of us could catch up with her. In fairness, our excuse is that we had heavier packs than she did. But we got to the top, and she's sitting on this beautiful rock, Eagle Rock, or whatever it is on top of that thing, southbound out of Duncannon, and she's just enjoying the view. And the high schooler is up there puffing and panting and about to trot back down into Duncannon. And we said, okay, that's it. Her name has got to be the Beast. So ever since then, the 4-year-old hiker was the Beast.
A lot of people think that we're crazy, super strict parents, forcing our kids to hike millions of miles, and that we just have no fun. But if you've ever hiked with kids, it's the opposite way. If you try to force them to do something, they're never going to do anything. They think we're the coolest parents, right?
Of course. The best you've ever had.
I kind of wanted to talk about how do you get your kids to go down the trail. If you have grandkids or kids, what is it that makes them go down the trail? And in the day of electronics and all of that, I do think it is harder for people because kids can be addicted to those things and then they want that. But luckily we grew up in Africa, so our kids don't know about a lot of that. So I think that's one of the reasons why it was a little easier. But one of the things is to figure out, they're all different, and we had 4 kids on the Appalachian Trail and they were very young, so it's figuring out what makes each of them go, and each of them are different. So Olin kind of like gets inside of their heads and figures out like, okay, well, one of them likes to talk. Actually, all kids like to talk. You think they're the quietest person, but you get them out on the trail and they're talking and talking and talking. So that's one way. And another way is just to try and be really fun. Even if you're not a fun person, you can be inventive and make up things. One of the times we were hiking up by Mahusik Notch. Has anybody done that part? Anyway, so a lot of people who were older than us find that maybe that's the most hard part of the trail. It's 0.7 miles, and it's a lot of jungle gym type stuff. But we had just camped. We were backpacking through there, and Olin and I both had huge backpacks on because that was before we had invested in a lot of our ultralight gear. So we had just what we had, and Olin had this big backpack on. The kids did not know what was in it, but it was Zane's birthday the next day. So we had camped just north of the
Notch.
Notch.
We're going south.
And in the morning, the kids woke up, and we're trying to make them not hate us later by hating that they didn't have a fun birthday. So we had packed in a helium balloon, like in the top of his backpack.
It's the best thing I ever carried.
Cupcakes, a little piñata stuffed with candy. And so he woke up, and we had a little birthday party and did the piñata, and the kids had fun. We took a stick and hung it from a tree, just did a bear hang, basically. So it was pretty easy. And then after we picked up all the candy and we got going, we were like, okay, you have to make it through Mahusik Notch without popping the balloon. So we tied it to his backpack, and we're like, if you can make it through Mahusik Notch without popping the balloon, you will get a brand new watch. So he was very motivated and very excited about that. And he had a little piñata attached to his backpack too. But he made it through and got a new watch at another trail town. So it was pretty fun memories. And actually later on some of the other trails, he's been stuck hiking on his birthday too and having to do some fun things. But other ways on the Appalachian Trail that we did, there's a lot of white blazes. So they played how to get to the white blaze, or who can get to the white blaze first. Anybody know the songs Frozen? Heard about that if you have grandkids. This guy became the master at singing most of the songs. When we were hiking, like one parent tends to...
I make a great Elsa.
One parent tends to, Olin ended up, he had the biggest backpack, so he ended up a lot of times in the back with Juniper, and he would be getting her motivated to go by singing and going up a big steep hill, belting out the Elsa songs. And what else did we do?
Make-up songs, VeggieTale songs.
We did. She learned to count up to. We started that, and we were like, "You don't know how to count to 100? You're 4. Really?" So we started counting and doing simple math.
Don't listen to a 4-year-old count to 400, to 800.
Yeah, there's a lot of miles in there, and you can talk and talk and talk and talk. And other hikers, they get the solitude of the Appalachian Trail, and some people even get off the trail because they're bored, but that was never our problem.
Yeah, most people, when they quit the Appalachian Trail, there are some physical injuries and some things that happen, family circumstances, whatever can take you off the trail. But it seems like most people that get off the trail just get lonely or get bored or get inside their own head and don't like it much. We never had that opportunity. How do you know when Angel Wings is sleeping?
When she stops talking.
Yeah. So we never got bored or lonely. Because what the kids want more than anything else is kind of their parents' attention and engagement and to be entertained. And we were very lucky in that our kids grew up in Africa with spotty electricity and really no electronics, and their games were whatever they could make out of sticks and mud in the yard, and they were very self-entertained or entertained each other. So the Appalachian Trail wasn't really depriving them of anything that they had been used to. They had been deprived since birth.
We were actually joking when we talked to some of the other thru hikers. We're like, we'll rent out our kids so that you guys are entertained.
If you're bored on trail, we'll rent her for, just feed her.
It sounded really bad though, when we put that in writing. So.
Yeah. Another way, she was actually just reminding me that one of the ways we had motivated them was with candy bars. we were hiking through Virginia, and we got up to Punch Bowl Shelter in Virginia, and 2 hikers were there, and their names were
Timber and Brown Sugar.
Timber and Brown Sugar. And the kids were out of the fire pit, and we had just bought some marshmallows, and they were roasting marshmallows. Sugar's always an excellent bribe. And they were offering the marshmallows to Timber and Brown Sugar. And the Timber and Brown Sugar said, "Hey, would you guys like some candy bars?" And my kids said, "What are candy bars?" And we thought, oh my goodness, we're horrible parents. But they were presented with Reese's peanut butter cups, and they looked at us like, we don't know what these are. When the stranger's poisoning us with something. So we decided to rectify that, and at our next resupply, we bought the 2 biggest boxes we could find of mixed candy bars. So we got to sample everything throughout the course of the trail. And let's see, what was it? Do you remember what were your favorite candy bars?
Three Musketeers.
You were $100,000, I thought.
No, I Butterfingers.
Butterfingers, 3 Musketeers.
They know them now, by the way. We've rectified that.
Milky Way.
All of them.
All of them. Fair enough. Or Jolly Ranchers. We get a big bag of Jolly Ranchers. And the kids were a little confused because they figured about every town in America had a road named Jolly Rancher Road.
Jolly Rancher Road.
Because every day we'd be like, okay, 4 roads from now is Jolly Rancher Road. So they'd count. We crossed 1 road, 2 roads, 3 roads, and the 4th road we got to would be Jolly Rancher Road. And that's when they would get a Jolly Rancher. And so they would always have something to count and to look forward to. But a lot of just engagement and talking. And we played 20 questions. We played I Spy. We played Builder, where we made up that we were building our imaginary future home.
We should have copied those
I
floor
mean-
plans, because now we're thinking of building, and that's coming.
The weirdest 20 questions was a robot marrying a unicorn.
Yeah, so Joey, the first time she played 20 questions, it took a lot more than 20 questions, and finally we gave up. And we were supposed to be guessing a robot marrying a unicorn. And we never quite made it there with 20 questions.
But there's a bunch of hikers here, so we should talk about gear, right? That's
Gear is always fun.
we find it really interesting when people talk about gear, and everybody thinks they need to spend a lot of money to start hiking, so then they don't start because then they don't have the money. So you were going to tell
So
about...
when most people before they start a thru hike, they do a shakedown hike. So they take the gear they think they're going to want on the trip, and they go hike for a weekend, a long weekend, a week maybe, and they shake down their gear to kind of see, okay, I didn't use this in a week, I'm not going to take this on my thru hike, or I missed this, I need to take this, and they figure out their gear. Well, we decided, we're just going to start. So we got back from Africa, and we loaded up our packs, and we just started, and we took everything.
You should never copy us, because this one here was like, I can carry it. Like,
I just got to keep up with a
no,
4-year-old.
he's like, she's 4. Like, we're not going to go very fast. So we had like an extra tent or 2 extra tents.
We had
when
like
first
3
started.
tents.
We couldn't decide which one we wanted, so we're
Well,
like, okay, bring them both.
We had a 3-person 4-season tent. We
had a
had
bivvy.
3 hammocks, 2 bivvy stacks, like 6 sleeping
Anyway.
pads,
A
6
2-person
sleeping
tent.
bags, a 2-person tent. We carried like 13 liters of water until we realized there's water everywhere on the Appalachian Trail. We carried way more clothes than we could wear in a week. We just carried it, and I was over 100 pounds when we started, and it was miserable. I thought like the first day, I thought I was having a heart attack, and we made it like 3 miles the first day. Like, we're done, we're good.
But it was all about having fun and just getting out there. So
It was a lot of fun. It was, yeah. And so the second day we lost about 6 liters of water somewhere on the trail.
we had brought a bunch of big juice bottles, because we don't carry the little bottles because we're a big family. So we had bought juice, and then we were just going to drink the juice and then use it as water bottles later. But we forgot it behind. They weren't opened yet, so we forgot it behind. Sorry about the trash, but forgot it.
It was trail magic. I mean, somebody scored liters and liters of juice.
And then we realized we weren't missing it.
Yeah, we did not need to carry all that. So we
but-
immediately got lighter, but after a week and a half or so, we actually went back to my father and stepmother's house in Hamburg, and we just kind of threw everything out in the driveway, and said, that was stupid. Let's reassess this. So they, all right, 4 kids can sleep in a 2-person tent under 1 single quilt. And so they did, and on 2 sleeping pads. So we did that, and we lost, what did we lose? We lost like 25 pounds or something in creating our own little version of a shakedown.
But we figured out it doesn't really matter what you wear. We were up in Massachusetts, I think, hiking.
Oh yes.
We were up in Massachusetts hiking, and another birthday that we had. Addison had her birthday, and she wanted to pick out something. We had gone into Walmart, and she picked out an Elsa dress, and I was like, okay, we're hiking, but it's 100% polyester, so okay, why not? So we ended up letting her hike in that, and we were hiking one time in Massachusetts, and there was some day hikers out, and people, misjudged kids. They were hiking at that point. We had already done New Hampshire and Maine, so at that point they were doing easily 20 miles a day, or over 20 miles a day. And they were fast, but they looked like little kids. They were little kids. And so we were chatting with these day hikers, and then next thing we knew, we were going up the hill, and we passed them, and they were like, we just got passed by a princess hiker. It was just really funny because they were looking all cute, but they were really tough.
Stand up and hold it on.
But this was Addison's little hiker dress.
With little frillies flailing behind her as she ran through the fields.
Anyways, and then she wore it for a long time after the trail too.
That was,
She wore it for the rest of the trail.
The last 2 months of the trail, this was her everyday dress. And actually then this one felt left out, so she hiked in a Wonder Woman outfit. Complete with wrist guards and shin guards and everything else.
Hey, don't knock it. We were having fun, so.
That's right.
But other gear specifically for kids, I think just as much sharing as you can do, because if you have a family like ours, that's Juniper's, yeah. It's so little. Yeah, it would probably now. But as much sharing as you can do, because you don't need 2 stoves. We all shared a stove. What else? They shared the same sleeping area.
They shared a tent, and we shared hammock straps. 2 hammocks, one on top of the other.
Yeah, we did bunk bed hammocks, and then it built around both of us.
We started with 1 hammock, both of us in 1 hammock, which sounds super romantic.
We did that on a previous hike.
It's awful.
We went on a 3-day or 4-day backpacking trip on the.
You're like, oh, we're just gonna sleep like this all night. And then
it was a
roll
double
over,
hammock, so we were like,
or then you try to go foot to foot, and you just slide down your butt to butt, and then you haven't showered in a week.
I was like, I am sleeping on the ground. I am not sleeping in the hammock.
It's a terrible idea.
But we did like hammocks because it's easy to find a space to sleep.
So we would get two hammocks on 1 set of straps. So I'd be laying down and she would be laying right here, just off of my body, which made me, a few times I woke up thinking I was in a coffin. But it worked out pretty well.
So we also were going to talk about kids are stronger than you think. There was a few times we had just left the New Jersey Pennsylvania border, and we were in our first month of hiking. I was carrying a little too much weight. I found my maximum that I can do really is 32 pounds. If I do more than that, my knees start hurting, but I was carrying much more than that at that point. We weren't as smart as we are now.
32 and a half or so.
We didn't have as much experience. So my knees really started hurting, and we had gone up this little steep hill, and then I was like, we have to stop early. I have to camp. So we decided to camp, and then my knee was still hurting in the morning. I used hiking poles, all the things, and I think I even had a brace, which we don't use braces anymore. But and then we're like, okay, we just have to drop weight. So how do we drop weight when we have a lot of us? So at that point, Lyle was 11. We were like, do you feel up to taking a little more weight than what he'd been carrying? Because in the beginning, he was the one that was the most hesitant to hike because he was the oldest one. If you can catch kids before they get a little older, then
Before we're smart.
it's a little easier to just everything is easier. So he decided to be brave and carry a little more weight. So I took this little backpack because I needed to drop weight or else our hike
It was
over.
this one.
No, it wasn't that one. It was a little bit bigger than that.
Actually, it was the 20-liter version. Of
Yeah, and Lyle took more weight, Zane took a little more, and everybody took my weight. And so in that way, I mean, we were a team. We had decided one of us wasn't gonna carry on without us. We wanted to do it together. And so we learned how strong our kids were in helping us. Another time in New Hampshire, we had day hiked over Moosilauke. I still don't know the correct way to say that. Moosilauke.
No matter which way we said it, some New Hampshire said it's no, the other way.
So we had just gone over that, and we were day hiking because we had a car near us. And we were at the bottom. We had done the hard part, gone down the steep steps, everything. We're really careful with the kids. And then the rest of us, I think, had gotten to the parking lot, and Olin was fishing around in his fanny pack for his keys. And so I guess he wasn't paying attention where his foot went. And he sprained his ankle. He fell off of the little bridge.
He stepped off a bridge funny.
I mean, if you make it sound like that, he stepped off a bridge, that sounds pretty amazing, but it was a little step.
Come on, no! These people have been on the bridges over rivers in New Hampshire. They know what it's like.
So he had a pretty bad sprain, and we made it to the car, and I was dropping off some other hikers because they wanted to go into town. And so I don't remember exactly. I brought the kids with me, or
No, they stayed with me.
Anyways, I got back from town and came back because we had the car, so people liked us because we could bring them into town and stuff. I got back, and he was like, his foot was propped up in the air, and I mean, we're both medical, so I looked at him, and I'm like he looked like death almost. Not to be dramatic, but he looked really bad. He had like the rain gear wrapped around his head, like because he was cold and he was hurting a lot. He might tell a different version.
It was in the shade.
He looked pretty bad, but anyways, it ended up just being a sprained ankle, and we pushed through, and we ended up getting an air cast on it. And he was like, I can hike just as fast as you. So again, he took a small fanny pack, I think it was, and the rest of us did. The next day we did an overnight over the Kinsman's. And to this day, that's the hardest part of the trail for us. I don't know, there was a lot of mud pits and just rocks and granite. And I don't know if it's because the rest of us were carrying a little more weight and Olin was injured. I don't know, but it was the hardest part for us. But again, the kids stepped up during that time and helped us, and we continued on.
It's amazing what kids can kind of build up to. In our first week, I remember it was our first week, and we finally at the end got we had just left, what's the name of that hostel in Northern Virginia? Bear's Den, is that it? Mm-hmm. Bear's Den Hostel. So we left there, and we were just gonna do, I think it was 5.3 miles or something. And we got there, and it was kind of within an hour and a half of getting dark. And it was like, well, do we want to go 3 more miles on to the next spot? And everybody said, okay, let's do it. We sat down and we talked as a family, and they all wanted to try for it. And that was going to be 8.3 miles.
But
that
for
would be
us,
a new
that
record.
was really
that was the
big.
farthest we would have done. So we did it, and the kids are playing and singing and laughing the whole way down the trail and seeming to have fun. And we get in before it's dark, and we get in, and people have energy to spare. And so he went a quarter mile off trail with me to go refill our water bottles and filter water. And we came back and we made dinner, and by now it's dark, and we were eating in the dark. And I was like, all right, so I started doing the math, and I was like, okay, 8.3 miles a day. If we can keep up this pace, we can actually do the whole trail. Like, who knew? Whoever thought this? So the kids then started striking their Katahdin poses. I think you still remember that? You still remember striking your Katahdin poses? What pose you would make on top of the sign at Katahdin in Maine? And that was one day, and then actually driving up here, I was just looking at my spreadsheet, because I make spreadsheets. And the day we hiked by here was our first 16-mile day. It was a big day. And you guys remember our first 17.4-mile day.
We kept
And at
hitting
the
new
end of that
records.
day, Nana Donna had got us pizza.
Yes, and
Remember that? And that was also into the
we
dark.
had to hose off outside. We smelled
We were
so
pretty
bad.
filthy that day.
Yeah. His dad picked us up, and I remember him saying later, like,
Gotta
"You
put the
guys
windows
smell
down."
so bad.
And then our first 17.5 mile day, I remember, when we finished before dark, that was in Maine. We did a lot of skipping around. And then it actually got to the point where we were in northern Maine, we were in the 100-mile wilderness. And there were some other Mainers that were going to come bring some kids and splash around in the lake with us. And we told the kids, all right, do you want to split this into 2 days or do it in 1 day? And it was 28.8 miles. And they said, we want to go for it. So they go, okay.
Because they wanted a day off.
They wanted, and the promise was a day off the next day. And kids to play with. So they did it. They did 28.8. We finished,
Late.
it was dark.
11.
It was pretty dark. But that was a 28.8 mile day. And then going up Katahdin, they did another 28 mile day, going from outside the park to the top of Katahdin, back to outside the park in 1 day. And then they hit,
That was my birthday.
and the day after that, or 2 days after that?
2
I think it
days.
was 2 days after that.
Because the reason we did that, we did like
Because we
6
did
extra
a short day the
miles.
next day.
6 extra miles so that we could finish.
Yeah.
The
And then there
next
was
day,
the
so
100-mile
that we
wilderness to
could
finish
take
the next
it.
day.
Yeah.
But then they had heard other hikers talking about the goal being a 30-mile day. We want to do a 30-mile day. So we're like, okay. So we were coming back down south, filling in a bunch of gaps that we had skipped over. And there was a spot in New Jersey that looked nice and flat. Now, I was like, if you guys ever want to have a 30-mile day and cheat, this is the day, because it's flat. It's like, all right. So they wanted to do it. So they got up at 4. And we got up and we had Taco Bell at sunrise. And we kept on going. And we realized that Pennsylvania is called what?
Roxylvania.
Roxylvania. And they only call it that because Roxel, Jersey doesn't sound as good. But it was the section right out of, actually no, about 18
Going
miles
right
into
to the
New
high
Jersey was
point.
the section that we did 30 miles. And it was every bit as rocky as Pennsylvania. So it was 30 flat miles, but it was pretty rocky miles.
And the boys actually went a little bit extra because they wanted to go to the high point.
They went to the high point in New Jersey. They did a little bonus miles there on the side trip. But we got it, and people were having high spirits. And what we learned is that their legs could get super strong. It was all a matter of their brains. If they wanted to do it, they could go do it. But at a certain point, their brains just kind of start melting. And they start shutting down and going to sleep. And they don't know it, but their legs aren't tired. Their legs are still marching along. But they're
And
kind
they
of going
also
into zombie
don't
land.
feel it the next day like adults do.
Oh, the next day.
Their knees don't hurt.
Like
They
the
didn't
next
know
day
they had done
we did
anything.
The next day we did like a 20.
The next day we did 18. The next day after that, 30.
I remember on the 30, you sent us ahead because there were a bunch of cobwebs and me and Zay were going with.
Yeah, they were holding sticks up to break down the cobwebs for me because it's never fun to be the tallest guy in the morning hiking through a new trail.
But we just wanted to wrap it up too with talking about something exciting like trail romance. And it doesn't happen a lot on the Appalachian Trail. We thought about, do we call it trail hygiene or trail romance? We weren't sure which we wanted to call it.
Not a lot of difference between the two. They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, with kids, it's also interesting because you're out on trail. There's not a lot of romance out there. I mean, when we were on a different trail, we heard about all these single people hooking up. It seemed like there was a lot of romance out there. But we were very fortunate to. We were very
know where you're
fortunate to
going.
continue our romance.
Yes, we.
We did not end up divorced, so we're very happy about that.
That's a win. So they call it, yeah, you know, white blazing the Appalachian Trail. That's the traditional, you go by every single white blaze, and that's what we felt we very much so had to do. And so we went by every white blaze. But there's, you guys know aqua blazing? It's when you maybe take a canoe around Shenandoah or around Delaware Water Gap to add some pizzazz. Yellow blazing is frowned upon. Have you heard of yellow blazing? That's when you walk the road, the yellow line on the road. It's very frowned upon on the Appalachian Trail. I've heard people talk about brown blazing, where you try to find a covered toilet every time you need one. A couple guys wrote a book on platinum blazing, and that's when you have a different sort of hiker budget and you're just catching Ubers from wherever you stop hiking to the nicest hotel that you can get to. And there's also pink blazing. Have you heard of pink blazing? That's when
Probably don't want to.
It's usually implied that it's a little bit creepy, but that's where a guy is following a girl up the trail. So I very much so pink blaze the Appalachian Trail. And yes, we had
So we had our trail
or
magic,
trail
and I
magic that
finished,
follows
and I was like, am I perimenopausal? Because I'm a little bit older, and it turns out I was just pregnant.
Just pregnant. And that hiker hunger / nausea was a different cause.
Yeah, so apparently we ate enough to support me getting pregnant. But
Go figure.
yeah, on those notes, are there any questions?
Oh, Daddy, remember the gnats?
And that.
At Wash.
All these stories are now coming to their
Oh.
brains, and they want to talk
So,
about everything.
if you've ever hiked in northern New England between Mother's Day and Father's Day, it is miserable because there are these little tiny black flies that look like nothing, but they just swarm, and I was ready to jump off Mount Washington. It was awful. Like, that was the day I most wanted to get on the trail, was those little black flies.
They didn't actually bother me that much. Like, I don't know if I'm not sweet or something, but the rest of them, they just ate at their necks and everything.
We'd have contests to see who had the most bug bites.
Well, and the New Hampshirites, I learned is the correct pronunciation. The New Hampshirites would swear, oh, it's DEET, put on DEET. So I put on DEET, and I think they'd be snickering, because that's like black fly Gatorade, I think. And they try picaridin, and so I'd try that, and that was no more effective either, and just about lost. I was tempted to donate pints of blood to put out as like a peace offering on the side of the trail. Like, just stay away from me. It was
No, but
awful.
Olin didn't even want to quit with his ankle or any of those things. But I was really surprised at the end of the Black Fly day, where it was really bad. He was like, I can't do this. I was like, what?
we actually-
Luckily, we had each other to reason with and put some sense back in.
They would also go fly straight at your eyes.
Oh yeah, they love your eyes. They just fly right into
I
the
remember
eyes.
that day we had sandwiches with mac and cheese and balls and
They were. That was the
and
least.
they got into my sandwich.
Yeah, that was the worst lunch stop ever. Yeah. Well, they're all vegetarians, so they.
You're sprinting while trying to eat.
Does anyone
Without
have any
swallowing
questions
flies.
that we can answer?
How long did it take you? How long did it take you to complete the Appalachian Trail?
It was about 7 months. We did 2-day hikes the end of February when we got back from Africa near their house, and then we started March 13, and then finished October
13.
13.
Yeah.
We took a few weeks off here and there for COVID reasons and family vacation.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't just zero. We had 0 weeks and 10
Also,
days.
if we ever took a 0, we'd
Yeah.
end up taking a double.
Okay.
Bad.
Yeah. So the other thing is that people, you've heard, you know what zeros are? So when you hike these long trails, a 0 day is a day where you don't hike any miles. You just rest, you do laundry, you go shopping, you resupply, you whatever. And we found that our zeros were more punitive than hiking, because these guys became super strong. And when they didn't have a day of hiking to exert their energy, you're in a hotel or you're somewhere trying to help them work their energy out in a confined space while you're trying to relax and get all your chores done. Zeros were harder than hiking for us. So we tried to master Neros, where it's almost a 0. You just hike a few miles to get into town, or you leave town and just do a few extra miles. That way they could at least get some of that energy out. But it's so amazing. We like to complain about how popular the trail is getting and how crowded it's getting, but really that's a good thing. I mean, more people are getting out there, recognizing how awesome things are. And if I were to after hiking some other trails, the Continental Divide Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, I probably would be less purist if I read the Appalachian Trail again. As opposed to going, must go by every single white blaze. I I think I'd be more open to doing some side trails, going around here and there, not skipping, connect your footsteps, whatever. That was kind of our big thing after we left the Appalachian Trail. We still want to connect our footsteps on the other trails. But it takes some of the pressure off the trail. We have so many people trying to go the exact same route. That's a lot of pressure on the trail. And yeah, it's nice variety. People can get different trails in, do different bits here and there. But the popularity of the trail is really going up among families. Buddy Backpacker was a bit of a legend. I don't know if you've heard the name of Buddy Backpacker. But he's the first kid that kind of went out and did this at age 6 with his mom and his stepdad. He was 6 when he finished. But yeah, he was a bit of a legend for families backpacking, and he showed what could be done. And we didn't really think that we'd be able to finish with a 4-year-old, but I mean, they're just amazing. And kids physically can do it. And mentally, if they're engaged with the parents, like if you can try to make it, if you can get into their mind and play some like mental ninja games with them, you can convince them that they're actually having fun, whether or not they are. And so many kids can do this. Our kids are made a little bit, they're built a little differently. Just I keep telling them they're bound to be weird. They have both nature and nurture going against them. Nature because we're their parents. Nurture because they were raised in a very unique circumstance in Chad, Africa. But they are built of something different. But we've seen time and again other kids can do this. A kid named Harvey did the trail. He finished at age 5 in 2021. A lot of families of 6, the Strawbridge family. What's the Kids Out Wild family? What's their family? I forgot their last name. But they did it. A mom who adopted 3 girls did parts of it. A lady with twin 4-year-olds did almost half the trail. There's a lot more families getting out there and realizing what kids can do. And it's pretty amazing what they can do.
Did you attract attention on the trail as a family?
We did our best not to, really, because it was 2020. And it was unsure. There were so many unknowns back then, and we said, okay, it was a logistics nightmare, but it was great for our family because we joked that our name should be Peace and Quiet because we're anything but. So being able to camp in places where we're not disturbing other people, it was really handy for us.
We really wanted Peace and Quiet to work, but it turned out we were the family.
Yeah, we became known as the family. But originally we posted on Facebook some things, but then we decided to just post in a private family group or in other groups of people who were out hiking that year. But we were in our own bubble of 6. And we actually, when we went to northern New England, we went with 2 cars. A camper in the back of a pickup truck full of food and a minivan full of food so we could hike between them. You pack up and you go 2 or 3 days this way and then you move the cars. And so the kids could sleep in the cars and we would just spend hours into the night shuttling while they were sleeping. Again, it was a huge logistics nightmare, but we wanted to respect the spirit of the law definitely because a lot of people were breaking rules in 2020 and we didn't want to do that period, especially with 4 kids. You just can't do that. So we wanted to make sure that we were legal everywhere that we went where we were hiking and kind of staying under the radar. So I remember the day that we actually walked by the AT Museum, which was closed, but we're like, all right, kids, look straight forward. Don't look right or left. Keep your head down. Pretend like you're day hiking. Just go. Yeah. But no, we didn't really attract much attention.
We did day hike a lot of the trail, but it was we did it all in 1 year.
It was kind of between cars, so you go. So when we were southbounding, filling in a lot of the gaps that we had kind of skipped around, because New York. If you remember 2020, and we all have a little bit of group PTSD from then. New York had an episode in April where it was just awful. So we're like, we're not hiking anywhere near New York in April. And then this part is kind of locked. And Pennsylvania, if you remember, Governor Wolf was kind of closing down county by county, and it just worked out that every day he closed down a county. We were hiking out of that county to the next one that was open. It was amazing. I think we called him every morning and said, hey, we're leaving this county. We're closing down now. But it was very interesting. Yeah, it was a logistics nightmare, but
I
in
think
the
it
long
kind
run,
of took
worked
some
out
of the
pretty well for
pressure
us.
off of us, because if you think that's a lot of miles, you might start to get nervous about that. But we didn't even know if we could hike tomorrow.
Yeah,
So it was like,
very much
okay,
so.
let's just keep going day by day.
You know, where's the next water spot? Where's the next spot we think we might want to sleep? Where's the next resupply? Where's the next road? Where's the next place that, if everything goes south, we can safely get a ride out. So yeah, no, but we definitely tried to kind of stay under the radar, not ruffle too many feathers.
Your shirt has the Triple Crown on it. Can you talk about those other 2 hikes you did and where you
No, this is the AT Museum.
But actually, I will say with all honesty, after hiking the other 2 trails later, it's the AT is still my favorite.
Mine too.
We were actually talking about this driving up, and we get a lot of questions. What trail was your favorite? And I say it's easier to tell you who's my favorite kid. Which one is my favorite? you. But there was something very special about the Appalachian Trail in that it was so empty, and it was a very unique dynamic. Just the ages of the kids, the way we were able to pull it off, the way we pulled together as a family. We could watch the kids really develop as a team and seek to take on responsibilities. Hey, Dad, can I help you go filter water? Can I, we got to go a quarter mile, a half mile for water. Can I go with you? Can I help you set up the tent? Can I look for a bear hang? The way they would take these roles on, the way we could see them learn and grow. And later, as things developed, as they were interacting more and more with other hikers, the way you could see them interact on a bit more of an adult level. Because everybody's on the trail. Like, the trail doesn't care what your economics are, what your politics are, what your religion is, or what your ethnicity is. I mean, it is still a very Caucasian trail, but that's changing in a very good way. And the way they could relate to anybody on anything, talking about the weather, talking about the trail, talking about the privies, talking about the hiker hunger, talking about whatever. It was very neat to see them develop in those ways and mature. From here, when we got to about the last couple weeks, we finished at this southern terminus in Georgia. And as we were going south through North Carolina and Georgia, we were in North Carolina, and we're like, okay, we're going to be finished in a couple weeks or less. What's next, guys? Because we knew we were going back to Africa, but then what was kind of the next adventure? We've now developed this taste for adventure. And the kids were like, well, are there any more trails? And I was like, well, since you asked, there are. And so I got out, there were a couple people kind of writing. They were clearly friends. They were writing jokes. This one's writing why the Continental Divide Trail is so much better than the Pacific Crest Trail. And this one's writing why the Pacific Crest Trail is so much better than the Continental Divide Trail. And it was on the same website. It was meant to be a tongue-in-cheek kind of set of articles. So I read the kids the 2 articles, and they were like, let's do that next year. And I was like, which one? I'm like, well, if we only have the chance to do one, let's do the Continental Divide Trail. It seems more interesting and intriguing. So they were the ones that kind of pushed for that. So we're like, all right, we'll go do the Continental Divide Trail. And I kept saying, it's a real trail, not to insult the Appalachian Trail, but suddenly you're at 14,000 feet instead of 4,000 feet. And the thunderstorms are now on much longer stretches of exposed ridgeline. The weather's bigger, the snowfall is bigger, the season is tighter. It's longer stretches between water, longer stretches between resupply, between road crossings. If something goes south, you're farther out there on your own. So I was like, all right, we're going to think about this. This is a really big leap for us. We didn't think we'd finish the AT, and I was like, I don't think we'll finish the Continental Divide Trail. And as it turns out, the next year we couldn't because we had this one. And Danae kept thinking, I can just hop off trail in Denver, have a baby real quick, and hop back on. And she's a gynecologist. First of all, you'd think she'd figure out birth control before we got to 5. Second of all, you'd think what the postpartum realistic picture looked like. But we ended up taking off 2021. We did a 1 week long, we did some backpacking trips after she had a baby. But then 2022 came along, and in January, the end of January, she had a hysterectomy, and 6 weeks later we were on the
sharing
trail.
it all, aren't we?
Yeah.
Would you like to know my social security number? You know our sex life, you know my medical history.
So we did start the Continental Divide Trail in 2022. And that was a lot of fun. It was a very different family dynamic because of a baby. She was 8 months older when we
It
started.
just takes on a new challenge. Like it's the
Yeah.
same thing, but then it's like, okay, how do you carry a baby and not carry diapers and breastfeed and like all of the things on the trail, which was really fun to research and stuff. And
Yeah.
we loved it. But
So
we're weird.
we are a little strange. So we got to the end of that, and the kids were like, "Well, there's only one more to finish the Triple Crown. We have to do that." So the parents certainly didn't say no, but it was pretty child-driven. This one was maybe the most reluctant from time to time, but it was a democracy where everybody had a veto, and we checked in.
And then she had 7 votes.
That's right. We say everybody gets a vote. Mommy gets 7.
I was pretty reasonable.
But it was, I mean, we were checking in, if not daily, at least weekly and monthly, and hey, does anybody want to get off trail? Are we not having fun? Do we want to stop? And we had bad moments. I remember our first really bad moment was in southern Virginia. It was kind of right where, no, it was in Tennessee.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you will. And it was our first real big sustained rain.
I remember.
And the kids, it's our first big rain. And the kids are like, puddles! We're gonna go jump in every single one of them. So they're splashing every puddle, and I was like, you guys, you're gonna get your share of puddles today. Don't worry about it. And no, it's fun. And they're running around and they're staying warm because they're running from puddle to puddle, jumping and splashing. And then as the evening wore on and we got to where we were gonna camp, they slowed down, and so did their metabolism, and they got pretty chilly and pretty wet. And then we got under a shelter and we put up a line and we started hanging up all the clothes, and we thought, okay, hopefully stuff will dry out by morning. And it turns out when you sleep in a cloud, nothing dries out. And things were wetter in the morning. And trying to get them to put on their clothes, and it was probably like 40, 50 degrees, and they're putting on wet clothes, and we're like, and so then that day, I grilled them on Frozen. I was like, what was the movie Frozen about? Elsa? Who's Elsa? And did the song go like this? And sing the whole song. And it was just engaging them and getting them to where we finally could get to a place that was warm and dry later that night.
That was also before we put our sleeping bags or quilts in trash bags, and we just since learned.
Yeah, we got
your quilt
squares
always
since
goes in
then.
the trash bag.
Daddy, was that the night when we roasted?
We didn't roast anything that night. But they did get warm and they were happy. And we had bad minutes, we had bad hours, but we never had bad days. And we can honestly say pretty much by every evening when we went to bed, people were smiling and they were happy and they were excited to go again the next day. But yeah, that morning was rough. That morning after that was rough. They were happy going to bed, not so happy when it was time to put on cold, wet clothes and start hiking.
Sorry, we're not actually giving you that many questions to ask.
I want to know something about the connect between trail life and off-trail life. Like, I'm sort of assuming you're a homeschool family.
Yeah.
Was there any of that going on while you're hiking, or did you feel like you had to catch up when you got done? And then what was secondly then what was the reintegration to the rest of the world like when you got done hiking?
We're still reintegrating.
Figuring that out.
So as far as the homeschooling, but yeah, we have homeschooled. Where we were in Africa, there was no reasonable alternative to homeschooling. So we did homeschool, and they all got pretty far ahead. And now we've pulled them back in. So they all got ahead, and then we could do like verbal stuff while hiking. So we could do a lot of spelling, which they were terrible at before and got better. A lot of math stuff. That was especially this one. On the Continental Divide Trail, she was 6. And the kids they're like, oh, we want to do a night hike. And usually you time it for a full moon and you hike all night, and it's a magical, different experience, and people love it and rave about it. And they had heard all this. So like, all right, sure, we'll do a night hike. And we got to about 11 o'clock, and it was not fun anymore. And we're like, all right, we're going to find anywhere where we can just throw a mat and be done. So we stopped, but we got up early next morning, and we started early, which is not normal for us, but we were getting into a town the next day. And we're hiking after having very little sleep, and she turns to me and she says, Daddy, there are 1,440 minutes in a day. And I was like, you're 6. Stop it. I was like, how did you figure that out? And she's like, well, there's 24 hours and 60 minutes an hour, so 60 times 20 is 1,200. There's 4 hours left, so 4 times 60 is 240, and then 1,200 plus 240 is 1,440. And I was like, you're a little freak, just shut up. And so we could do those kinds of things, and we could talk about nature, we could talk about history, we could talk about things that were appropriate, but we couldn't really do the book learning part. So while they got really far ahead, then you spend 7 months, 6 months hiking, and it kind of end up behind, and it was catch up again. And it was a lot of, hey guys, if we want to do these trails, you're going to have to work pretty hard at school in between the trails. And they did. And then we decided on the Continental Divide Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, we'd get them iPods. So they all have iPods now where they could have Kindle and they could download classic literature. So he was listening to The Count of Monte Cristo and Tale of Two Cities, and they were listening to Mermaids and Princesses, classic literature. But there were some good intentions, some of which panned out, some of which panned out less. Oh, you guys can journal on your iPods, and that didn't really happen. There were Anne of Green Gables. There was some of those things going on. But we definitely did not keep up the pace that we do when we do more traditional homeschooling. As far as reintegrating, our house in Chad would be condemned anywhere in America. We're 25 miles from the nearest pavement. Our region of 1 million people with no public electricity or water or anything. I mean, we're on a hospital compound, so we have a generator that usually works.
So your home base is still in Chad?
It was, so we kept going back between every trail. And then finally, when we came back for the Pacific Crest Trail, May of last year, a year ago, that was it. We were done. She's been back a couple times over winter to help out.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we're trying to figure out what our life looks like now. We're kind of committed to moving to Michigan. We kind of have jobs starting in the fall. But from here, actually on Thursday, we're flying to Spain to do the Camino across northern Spain. And then Chad is a francophone country, so the kids speak some French, but it's really bad French. So we're going to spend 6 weeks in France trying to clean up the French little bit.
Adequate.
Sure, we'll go with that. No, his French is actually very good. Writing, not so much, but speaking, he's very good.
Write a sentence or die. I'd be dead.
Yeah. So we're having a final hurrah this summer before we try to, buy the SUV and drive to soccer practice and do those things. Interestingly, we did just decide last week that we're going to put these two in forest school. So they do they're kind of indoors for 3.5 hours in the morning, and they spend the rest of the day doing outside learning, chopping wood and gardening and doing those things. We were like, well, they've learned all they can from outdoors. We're not going to put them in an outdoor school, but everybody kept recommending it. We went and looked, and we're like, okay, they want to do it, fine. He's chosen to homeschool for one more year, and he'll be starting high school. So it's going to be a pretty big adjustment for us.
Sorry, we could talk and talk and talk because we have lots of stories, but
Yeah, I was wondering if each of the kids could share what their favorite memory of being on the Appalachian Trail was.
You go ahead.
Grayson Highlands.
Grayson Highlands. The what? And actually,
What did you love about Grayson Highlands?
Horses.
What did you like about it?
The ponies.
Yeah.
Did they come up to you? Did you have a special one that came up?
They would lick your leg.
Yeah.
we actually got to camp near Thomas Knopf Shelter, and then the ponies came up, and we left at like 11 a.m. that day because
Yeah.
they were just licking us like crazy in the morning.
They were getting a little aggressive, actually. It was her eye, right? One of them nipped her right on the cheek.
No.
Drew a bit of blood. But yeah, they're salt-deprived wild ponies that love licking you, and they'll like gnaw on your trekking poles if you're not careful.
Actually, our daughter's middle name is Grayson because it was a really fun memory.
Because of the
Yeah,
Grayson Highlands,
awesome.
yeah.
Did you have something you want to share, Addison? Do you remember?
I liked Cascade.
Ooh.
And my birthday at the water park.
So you meet a lot of other thru hikers on the trail, and their favorite was Cascade because she was a real-life Disney princess. She was 18, 19. She had just finished high school, and she was hiking the trail, and we randomly met her while southbounding through Virginia, we happened to be camping at the same place, and she got in after the kids went to bed. But in the morning, she regaled them with stories of gnomes and I don't remember what all. And she had kind of written this ongoing story through all of the guest books all along the trail. So they would look for her stories along the trail. And then the day that we were on the Massachusetts-Vermont border, we saw her again.
I was like, I know you. But then we couldn't figure out how we knew each other, and then we figured out how we
Well,
did.
it's also always awkward to strike up a conversation when somebody's coming to the trail from the woods with a roll of toilet paper.
No, it was a weird year.
And they start with, I know you from somewhere.
That's how it started.
Anyways, she became such a close friend of ours later that we ended up bringing her to Africa for 5 months, and she helped teach the kids for 5 months. So we like to keep up the connections with people that were out in 2020, especially on the trail.
But she knew all of the Disney songs by heart. Amazing voice, so they got to hike with a real Disney princess for a week and a half.
You taught us how to sew.
She taught you how to sew?
Zane, did you want to share something?
My favorite place is probably Logistical Notch.
Oh, why?
It was like a jungle gym.
It was like a jump. So everybody's telling us, how are the kids going to do Mahoosuc Notch, like the hardest mile, 0.7 miles of the whole trail? Because you're under boulders and through, and there was one point where the hole was like barely big as my backpack, and it's like you're spelunking above ground, like pushing your backpack through, and then like trying to get through like you're coming out of a womb again, like trying to turn your way out. But the kids loved it. I mean, it was 2.5 hours to go 0.7 miles, but they thought it was awesome. It was a big playground.
Lyle, did you have something you want to share?
The end.
The end?
The end. What did you like about the end?
Finally knowing that you were finally able to finish it.
Yeah.
And then all the marshmallows.
Oh,
We had jumbo marshmallows.
every 100 miles we would celebrate. We started at 400 miles. We'd celebrate by making something out of sticks. We'd make 400 out of sticks or 500 out of pine cones or whatever. And as we got hungrier, it became more food-based. So out of wild raspberries or blueberries that we picked, or gummy bears, or whatever, M&Ms, goldfish, whatever.
Coke cans on the CDT.
Oh, on the CDT we made out of Coke cans.
Spike cans.
So we decided to finish the Appalachian Trail with marshmallows. And then after we took our picture, shoved them in our mouth.
We did a chubby bunny.
And
There's
tried
only
to-
so many of the
it was-
jumbo ones you can.
It was to
stick in
count
there.
how many marshmallows you could put in your mouth and still say the words chubby bunny. If you've never tried it, you really should tonight.
Marshmallow drool coming out.
Yeah. And
I
also,
don't know if it won.
who did we celebrate the end of the trail with?
Gampa.
Gampa and Anadana.
Yeah, they were actually there to hike in the last mile to
And it was
the
really
top
cool
of this.
because Owen's dad had also started with us, like the very first day or two.
So since they lived right at Port Clinton in Hamburg, our first 2 days in February were day hiking kind of around there. And he joined us on one of those day hikes. So we got to be there at the beginning and the end. And very much so regrets not being there for the entire middle.
I have finished the Appalachian Trail. 1 mile, but I have finished the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
The thing I learned about this was I'm on 6 acres being right below the Appalachian Trail. I never knew thousands of people were walking past my house.
From all over the world. You really probably could hit a driver from the Appalachian Trail to her property.
Yeah.
Big downhill, and her property goes up the back of the mountain quite a ways.
Should have had a food stand there. She could have made a fortune.
That's right, yeah. If you put a food stand up there, you get enough. They're pretty hungry by the time they get to Hamburg. Their half gallon from here is worn off.
We need to become trail angels.
Actually, when we finished, we had not done the half gallon challenge. So when we finished with them down in Georgia, we did the half gallon challenge. And everybody, all of these greedy people, even the 4 and 6, 7-year-old, thought they could finish a half a gallon. And it was cold because it was mid-October, and we're outside eating half a gallon, and my whole face is numb. But I was gonna finish that half gallon. I'm not sure if all of it stayed in, but eventually I regained feeling in my face.
I almost finished it 5 days later.
I would have finished, but Mommy made us stay
You would not have one, yeah. So we tried it again on the CDT, a half-gallon challenge, and we split up into teams, and it was we still didn't finish it.
Me and Zane
No, I finished one with Mommy.
Remember, we had to throw away some of it.
No, Juniper and Mommy go Daddy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, we're at time, yeah? We're unemployed and homeless. So if anybody has more questions or has a warm heart, we're going to hang around for a little bit longer.
Queen Bee, the Beast, Boomerang, Blaze, Angel Wings, Spreadsheet, and the little list is?
Dead Weight.
Dead Weight. Fantastic. That's great.
On behalf of myself, Larry Luxembourg, and all the volunteers of the Appalachian Trail Museum, thanks for watching.
If you would like to help support the museum, you can become a volunteer.
Hi, welcome to the museum.
Donate at the museum or online, or become a member of the AT Museum Society. For more information, please visit atmuseum.org.